The honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And in my previous 8 minutes that I spoke about yesterday, I unpacked some of both the challenges with what the Liberals are proposing and why I believe that the sunset, what is more or less a sunset clause that the opposition House Leader has proposed, is so vitally important to the discussion that we have. But, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to conclude my remarks on this by emphasizing something that I believe is resulting in a profound, or is causing a erosion of our democratic institutions in this country. Mr. Speaker, we see a growing disconnect between the executive branch of government in Canada and the legislative branch of government in Canada. And the reason why I bring this up is because it is foundational to what makes Canada distinct as a Westminster federal state. We have, unlike our American counterparts in the United States, unlike other republics around the world, we see that our executive branch of government, represented by the Prime Minister, the first minister among what is supposed to be equals, although that tradition, I think, has long since gone away, and the government represented by the Cabinet in the front bench, members of the Privy Council, we have seen a growing disconnect between what happens in this place and what conduct they decide upon when it comes to how government operates. And Mr. Speaker, this is especially concerning because in our nation, it is this place, with the exception of senators that are elected from Alberta, being the small exception, this is the only institution on a national level where Canadians get to choose who represents them. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion to my speech, I would urge all members of this House, and specifically Liberal members, who seem to be intent on seeing that growth, that disconnect expands between the executive and legislative branches of government, because, Mr. Speaker, the ultimate result is that breaks the very foundation of what our democracy is supposed to be. Thank you.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire, the Honourable Minister of Families.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for his speech. I did want to note that there are in fact 2 members of his caucus who have had babies during this Parliament, who have actually been able to participate fully as members of Parliament after giving birth because of the hybrid option that is available. And so since he and his party is opposed to this, I'd like to understand how they propose that his colleagues could participate following giving birth to their children in such a way. And I'd also like to ask him, and I hope he answers honestly, if he or any other member of his caucus has ever availed themselves of the voting app or of using the hybrid system, and why he feels that we should not continue to do this, because it's actually enabling more gender equity in this place and allowing a greater diversity of people to participate and represent their constituents. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I find it very interesting that a Minister of the Crown wouldn't have commented on my most recent remarks about the growing disconnect between the legislative and executive branches of government, because, Mr. Speaker, I think that highlights the troubling trend that we're seeing that is causing an erosion of trust within this institution, and that is contributing to why Canadians simply not only do not trust the Liberals, but simply are losing trust in the institutions, the democratic institutions of our country. And they point to members like that minister and the Prime Minister, among others, who are directly contributing to that. Mr. Speaker, my commute each week is about 12 hours doorstep to doorstep. And I count it an honor and a responsibility in the midst of the family sacrifice associated with this. Never once have Conservatives said that we shouldn't find accommodation. It's playing politics on what we believe are serious issues when it comes to the need to ensure that we respect our democratic institutions and the more than 8 centuries of history associated with that. So, Mr. Speaker, I would urge that minister and members of all the other political parties that seem to be bent on rushing into these things, let's take a pause and ensure that we are finding the right balance, because simply put, my constituents do not trust members like that and other Liberals who seem to be putting their political self-interest ahead of that of the country and our democratic institution, including those who would be pushing for inclusion, greater inclusion.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire, the honourable member Esquimalt Saanich Sooke.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I have to say, as one of the people who believes very much in diversity in the House of Commons and making sure that all kinds of Canadians can actually participate in democracy, I'm a strong supporter of the virtual Parliament measures. And I think it is essential to our democracy that Parliament does evolve and does change. And next door to me, the member for Victoria is a young mom who's about 2 days away from having a second child. And because she can't fly during that period, she would be excluded from these proceedings if it weren't for virtual Parliament. And so I think that what we're seeing here is an evolution that makes Parliament more democratic and more representative. And I find it hard to see. I, like the member, have a long commute, and I go home every weekend, and I don't avail myself of virtual Parliament very often. But that doesn't mean I think others should be deprived of that right.
Gentleman member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, with the answer or the question that was just asked, along with the comments associated with it, and likewise the minister who asked before, then I expect that they will be supporting the amendment put forward by the House Leader. Because what that does, pure and simple, Mr. Speaker, is ensure that Parliament continues to be able to look at this and its impacts on our ability to do our work in this place, Mr. Speaker. Never once have Conservatives said that we shouldn't endeavour to increase inclusion, that there should not be accommodations made. To suggest that is blatantly untrue. So, Mr. Speaker, what we need to do, however, is ensure that we maintain and treat carefully, with the utmost respect, the democratic infrastructure that we have, this place, this House of Commons, however one participates in it, treat it with the utmost respect to ensure that we are ultimately respecting Canadians, Mr. Speaker. That needs to be our focus. That needs to be our emphasis. It needs to be focused on ensuring that Canadians can be represented in this place.